Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Fedoseev the 6th, 95, a Grandmaster in the 5-minute pool on ICC. He's playing a very early c4. Let's just play knight f6 against that. High rating in this with this player. Queen c2, defending c4. I guess I'll play g6 and kind of play a hybrid setup where I go for bishop g7, so Grinfeld Slav hybrid. Rare to see queen c2 that early. Let's play bishop g4. Maybe I can trade the bishop for the knight. Hope you guys are having a good weekend already. Or happy Friday if you're seeing this on a Friday. h3, yeah, I kind of got to take that. So we've given up the bishop pair, but I have good control of the center. I can play e6 or maybe e5. Hard to say which one's best. Let's play e5. Let's grab the center space. This player has a pretty high rating, 2532. I don't recall having played them. Grandmaster Vladimir Fedoseev. Wow, peak 5-minute rating of 2804. This guy's in the 2800 club in the 5-minute pool on ICC. Bishop g5, okay. Let's play rook e8, just back up this pawn. I'm not going to play h6 yet. Okay, so there's a trade. And then rook c1 probably. Okay. Queen b6 or rook c8. I have a feeling they're going to move this knight to d2 very soon. Okay, let's play this now. And then move that back. Okay, so that's helpful because now they can't bring the knight to that square. e4. e4, knight d4. Yeah, let's do that. Open the diagonal for this bishop. If queen b6, probably bishop e3 will be the answer. I could take, they might take with the pawn. But then knight e5 looks halfway decent. Takes. If they take with the queen, I can play knight e5 and maybe get the c4 square. Okay, let's take and find out which way they want to recapture. I predict pawn takes. Okay, they do take with the queen instead. Let's go knight here. Attack that queen. I want to play knight c4 next move. And if I do it now, yeah, that attacks the bishop on d2. Maybe I can play knight e4 and get both bishops working towards the center. Yeah, knight e4. Knight e4, bishop takes, rook takes. Yeah, I think it's worth trying to eliminate their light square bishop. Oh, they can just take that. I'm not sure why I was so oblivious to my b-pawn hanging. Okay, so now I can take b2, or take c3 rather. But d5 would be hanging after that. Okay, I'm going to go here. And then take here. Okay, I'm down 2 pawns though. I have some decent activity for the moment, but 2 pawns is a lot. And knight c6 is a threat. Okay, let's play rook b2. I completely blanked on queen takes b7. Totally overlooked that. All right, so now we got to do our best scrambling job to get back in this game. Rook b1, just trading. Yeah, see, if I take d4 and take e2, d5 is hanging at the end of the line always. That said, I think I almost have to take this knight. I mean, my dark square bishop isn't doing anything else, and that knight is just a linchpin for white's position. It defends e2, and maybe I can take and then play rook to d2. Let's do that. So if queen takes, there's rook to d2. It took me a while to see this resource. So defending the pawn from behind like this, and now I can play rook takes e2 on the next move. I guess I can play queen a7, though. Yeah, here I can't play this rook takes because of rook b8. Let's come here. Attack their queen. So stopping any queen or rook to b8 business. Gotta watch that time. 2-minute time advantage for my opponent. But I don't know, if I get to play rook e takes e2 next move, maybe I get something going on f2. All hope is not lost yet, guys. Alright, take. I gotta do this. Rook b8 is not working. There's no queen on f4. Okay, he goes for that one. Knight e5. Yeah, knight e5, right? Queen here. But then I can take on f2. Because if queen f5, I take f2, and after queen takes f2, rook takes f2, king takes f2, I have knight d3 check. So that just wins. Not much time to figure this out, but I'm optimistic. This is looking good. Queen h5, rook takes f2. Let's play that right away. Bishop h1, pretty much forced. Then queen f6, I'm thinking. Threatening rook g2, actually. Rook g2, bishop takes g2, queen f2, and queen takes g2 mate. Wow. I might steal this game. Would be kind of miraculous. I mean, he's got a useless check on b8, king g7. If bishop takes d5, I can always play rook takes d5. So I don't see that doing anything for white. Yeah, he just resigned. Okay, so seizing victory from the jaws of defeat. I was down 2 pawns and it wasn't looking good, and like I said, I completely overlooked queen takes b7. Which is weird, because when the queen moved to b3, I mean, the first thing I thought was, okay, he's attacking b7, but then I played some other move that didn't even address that problem. Okay, let's take a look. So this is a line that I've faced before, kind of a gambit line for white. I could take the pawn right now if I want, but usually there's no rush to take that. Like knight f6 is fine, but it's unusual to see this early of a queen c2. Maybe this is a decent idea for white because normally they play knight f3, encouraging you to take the pawn, and then later they try to get it back with queen c2 or knight a3 after having castled. But I don't see anything wrong with an immediate queen c2. So I just played g6 and fianchettoed this bishop. I had some hopes of playing bishop f5 with tempo on the queen, but given that they can always respond to that with d3, this is probably acceptable to white. So d3, bishop g4, knight bd2, knight bd7, h3, so white ends up getting the bishop pair. Note that since I've fianchettoed on this side of the board, I can't play bishop h5. If I play that, I'm walking right into g4 and my bishop is trapped. That's why sometimes fianchettos and a bishop attacking a knight on the same wing, so when you have 2 bishops aligned like that on the same side of the board, it's not conducive to keeping that bishop that's outside the chain. When it gets attacked, you usually can't retreat it because of the fact that you have a pawn in the way of a retreat back to g6 in this case. So I take f3 and then push e5. Let's add the engine right here. It's probably going to give white a small advantage. Yeah, that's a decent advantage, half a pawn. I think white's bishop pair is probably worth something. I do have good control over the center. Maybe the pawn is actually better placed on e6, I don't know. Which would be consistent with having given up my light square bishop. I feel like this is a theme that happens in a lot of my games. One side's giving up the bishop, and then I'm always talking about putting the pawns on the same color square as that bishop, if you're the side who's given it up. Because it's a good way to shore up the squares that you're now missing. But I played e5 instead, taking more of the center. Rook e8. So white opened the file. This was a good idea, rook fc1. It's possible I should kind of preempt the c takes d5 move by playing rook c8. Maybe this is more promising. So anticipating this, after which I would take the file for myself. I guess that doesn't stop white from playing a move like rook fc1 again, but my rook would be useful on c8. But rook e8, take, here, h6. I thought white would take, because it really seemed to me like they were trying to reserve the d2 square for the knight. So say bishop takes f6, knight takes f6, knight d2, something along these lines. Engine's not impressed. Says just rook c8 and black is fine. Oppose white's queen down the file. Makes sense. So bishop back to d2, and now I pushed e4. This move looks active, but it leaves some weaknesses in its wake. So after e4, I no longer control the d4 square, so it makes sense that white jumps in there. Knight d4, knight took. The engine prefers queen b6, attacking the knight. I didn't like that in view of bishop e3, and I thought the bishop would be stalking my queen on b6, and I wasn't sure exactly how to deal with that. Huh, that's a weird line. Take, pawn takes, knight g4, trying to open up the bishop on d4. H takes g4, bishop takes d4, bishop takes, queen c3, slight edge white. If I take g4, then d5 would hang. The engine likes white a little bit. But I took on d3 instead. Okay, so it actually prefers the pawn capture. I was wondering about that. It seems better to take with a queen, because white keeps their structure together. By taking with a pawn, white accepts an isolated pawn, but taking with the pawn does have some advantages. Namely, that the e4 and the c4 squares are now covered, which might be potential outpost squares for my knight. I might be looking to use that IQP on d5 as an anchor point for those knights. So this has some advantages. But queen takes, I played knight e5, queen b3, and knight c4, okay. Yeah, bishop to c3. And this is where I lose sight of the b7 pawn, although maybe it's not so bad. I might have backed into this by sheer luck. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I just blundered it. I'm trying to recreate my thought process and identify whether I actually meant to give this pawn up, but I'm pretty sure this is just a blunder, and there wasn't any justification behind queen takes b7. Interestingly, the computer says don't even take the pawn for white. Just play e3 and reinforce. This is what I was talking about, though, the d5 pawn serving as an anchor for these knights. This is kind of nice for me, and I open my bishop. So queen takes b7, rook b8, queen takes a7. Oh, and now I could have played this and tried to chase the queen. Queen b7, rook b8. So there's just a perpetual on the queen. What if he comes to a6, so rook b8, queen a6? Knight takes f2. Well, I guess I could continue chasing the queen if I want, but maybe white's wriggling free. Something like this. Even here, knight takes f2. King takes f2, queen g5. So sack a piece and then don't even regain it right away. Threaten queen to e3 check. Very hard to see in a blitz game. So rook a8, just looking at that line one more time. Rook a8, queen b7, rook b8, and if they try to avoid the draw, they just chase them. Does it work here? Knight takes f2. King takes f2, queen g5 again, and somehow this is equal. If I was more interested in that, I would investigate that line, but that's kind of crazy. I just know I probably wouldn't find this in a blitz game. Giving up a piece and then calmly bringing your queen into the action. But as it played out, I got rid of this bishop. I kind of wanted to make sure that this bishop was not opposing my dark square bishop, so I would have the dominant piece on this diagonal. But it appears to be a mistake. Yeah, the computer hates that move. Jumps up to almost +2 for white. Now rook b2. So I'm just striving for activity right now. I have some plans of taking that knight and trying to go after e2, but it's a little vague right now. I'm just kind of trying to activate my position. I know I'm down 2 pawns, and usually when you're down a couple pawns, you have to compensate in the form of activity or an attack. So white plays rook b1. Yeah, so I spent a little time here, but I think it was warranted because finally I found this rook d2 move. I think without rook d2, black is essentially losing. Like, say I capture on e2 instead. Let's say I even take this way, the more aggressive capture, trying to attack f2. Well, they could take on b2, or they could even play this move from the looks of it. And if I lose d5, then my knight has no stability, and white is threatening bishop takes f7 because queen takes queen is coming after that. So that's just resignable. A knight in an open board like that against a bishop, especially one paired with another piece, the queen, that's just deadly. The knight has no useful and safe post. But rook d2 was a nice resource defending this pawn and enabling rook takes e2 next. Maybe they should have played queen a7. I was wondering about that move, but they played queen f4 in a flash, and queen a7 has a similar idea, like trying to stop rook takes e2 because of the counter rook b8 with the skewer. But it's harder for me to harass the queen on a7. The queen on f4 I was able to kick away with g5, but I kind of feel like this might be a better option. If I play something like rook e7, they can force a trade, queen b8 or rook b8, and get the queens out by force. And then white's material advantage should tell, and probably this pawn falls too. But he played queen f4. Now again, rook takes e2 would be a horrible blunder because of rook b8 winning my queen. But fortunately, I have this move g5. And I get the sense now white has to be pretty careful. Computer still gives an edge to white, but it wasn't as big as it once was. Queen f3, so I take here. So now they need to go into defensive mode, rook f1, and just admit that I have enough pressure on f2 to force them on their back foot for now. Some weird ideas here, like can I do this? Trying to attack the rook and also the bishop. Maybe they can take and give up the queen for 2 rooks and still hold an advantage. Also, apparently they can play this move, which looks kind of complicated, but makes sense. So if I take f1, they take e2. But pretty clearly, rook f1 should be played. Yeah. And then it's an interesting game. I mean, if we take count of the material, black's only down 1 pawn. I guess I could even get it back right away. Is there anything wrong with this? Oh, I lose d5. Okay, because my rook is not defending there anymore. Knight e5 is another move. I probably would have done something like this, knight e5, and maybe try to come in here. Again, I lose d5, though. I got to watch that pawn. But they played rook f7, and I played knight e5. Oh, I also had rook takes f2 right away, defending the f7 pawn laterally. And then if this trade happens, what do I have here? Trying to find some way to win material. Queen to c8. And this is good for black. Because I'm hitting the rook and maybe queen c5 is a threat? What if rook b5? Queen e8. Threat here, threat here. Again, hard to see in a blitz game. I just played knight e5 because it looked like the right move. It attacks the queen, so I might have time to take the pawn, and it also is a move that defends backwards on the f7 pawn. So if queen f5 now, I was planning rook takes f2. And if queen takes f2, take, king takes, I have knight d3 with the fork. I'll be winning gobs of material. I guess there's queen f5, rook takes f2, queen takes e5, but I assume that this is very good for black. King h1, check. Here, check. Here, rook takes a2, I can win that pawn and threaten mate. King g1. This is kind of a windmill idea. That's pretty standard. King f1. And now rook e2. Okay. Threaten the queen. And black is a lot better. I assume if they go into this 2 rooks versus queen ending, yeah, it's even material. I have a queen plus pawn against 2 rooks, but white's king is exposed, and white does not yet have coordination. If those rooks coordinate against a queen, they're a lot more effective, but kind of separate like this, they're not nearly as dangerous. Also, a lot of times, the number of pawn targets that the queen has to attack will determine whether the queen is better or the 2 rooks are better. And here, there's plentiful pawn targets. There's queen takes g3, and there's queen e6 check, forking the king and the pawn over here. So that's why the computer very much likes black, and my king is pretty safe comparatively. But he played queen h5, and then I just took on f2, threatening the bishop, and yeah, it looks to be almost over. f7 still guarded. White does not have time to take on h6. I'll take g2 with check. So they played bishop h1, and now queen f6, and yep, there you have it. It's forced mate. The main threat is, say white just does something. The main threat is this, rook g2. They can't move anywhere with their king because my queen controls the f-file, so bishop takes, and then queen f2 check, and take g2 mate. White has no remedy to this. The only move I was thinking they might be able to play is bishop takes d5, or, you know, throw in a check or something, and then bishop takes d5. Oh, but that's also a mate.
Check.
Yeah, check. They take it as the same thing. Here, check, and then bring the queen in.
Checkmate.
Okay, so even that wouldn't have prolonged the game very much. Okay, so kind of fortunate. I think maybe Fedoseev should have spent a little more time after rook d2. They responded quickly with queen f4, and you can see they spent 7 seconds on that move. But I feel like the position is sharpening up now that black has that. And maybe they just saw queen f4 and saw that if they lose the pawn, rook b8 is the answer, and possibly overlook g5. I think queen a7 would have kept white right on the winning track. All right, hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.